I'm Robert Evans, Sony Artisan of Imagery. Becoming a celebrity wedding photographer is sort of, I say it's a world that chose me, I did not choose it. I had shot a backyard Beverly Hills wedding. I printed some of the images for the florist. He's like, I can't tell you how many photographers I ask for images and I don't get them. And from that moment on, he was sort of my friend or a fan, and he started sending me weddings. He's the one that had the job of being the florist and was hired for Brad Pitt and Jennifer Aniston. He told the planner, hey, I know a really great photographer. And they said, fine, let's have him send his work in. And so I sent it in. A week or so later, I got a call from the planner saying, the client really loved your work, you got the job. And I just about, I don't know how to describe it, but it was a well of emotions that sort of came over me. I laughed, I cried, I freaked out. I mean, over the years, of course, now I've shot many different celebrity weddings, musicians, business people. I think the one thing that I've learned over the years about celebrity, ultimately they're just people. They want the same things as a typical bride and groom. They want beautiful images, great memories. They might look to be a little bit more creative and artistic and, want the best of the best, which is, I think, why I've gotten those jobs. In this video, you will learn about how to get the shot you want, my favorite features of Sony cameras, how I educate my clients about the wedding day. You'll also learn about capturing great engagement shots, the camera settings I use, especially with multiple cameras, arranging the wedding day photography timeline, how I become the second shooter to capture truer emotional moments, using social media to maintain a competitive advantage, and finally, my post-production process. One thing I like to ask photographers is, do you shoot what you want or do you shoot what you get? Shooting weddings for 27 years, I've learned to shoot what I want and not just what I get. Today I'm going to show you how to shoot what you want and not just take what you get. As a photographer, I think it's so important to shoot images that inspire us and shoot the things that we want to shoot and not just always shooting images for our clients. So I tell my clients, I shoot 90% of the images on your wedding day for me, because at the end of the day, if I'm excited about what I'm shooting, then my clients are going to be excited about their wedding images. About 4 years ago, I just started hearing this Sony buzz, and I really wanted to try the cameras. So I got a hold of one, I started shooting it, and right away I just noticed these features, like the Wi-Fi on the camera, and the electronic viewfinder, and the dynamic range in the sensor. Shooting a Sony camera today, I just feel like I have that much more above my competition. I'm that much better of a photographer because of the features that I have at my fingertips in these cameras, such as being able to send an image right to a client in a second or to a wedding planner. The dynamic range in the sensor is just absolutely amazing. It's like shooting film. I can expose for the shadow and I can let the highlight blow out just like I could with film. I love the articulating screen, and I love the ability to be able to hold the camera above my head during a group dance at a reception or a hora at a Jewish wedding, and actually be able to look up and frame my shot instead of just tilt the camera and guess where the action might be. I can just use that articulating screen and make sure that everything's framed perfectly. The biggest key into shooting what you want and not just getting what you get really starts with educating your client. This is their first wedding, and so they have no idea. Prepare them for the emotions and the feelings that they're going to feel. Walk them through the timeline of the day, of how it's all going to unfold. And you have to be the expert. You have to listen to their considerations and their wants and needs, and then you have to come back to them and meet them in the middle. As the expert, you need to explain to them how they're going to get the best images and lay out the plan for the day. The first meeting with the client is really important because that's where the client, of course, gets to know you. And for me personally, I feel that should be the biggest reason that a client hires you, is because they love who you are, they love your personality. Yes, they have to like your work, but you should be the type of person that they would invite to their wedding anyway, even if you weren't the photographer. I think it's more important to get them talking about themselves during the meeting than so much of me talking about myself and how good I am. Often I'll ask how he proposed, and often the proposal story is very indicative to what type of wedding it will be or what type of client that will be. If I have the couple where he's done a very elaborate proposal, I know that this couple's very in tune with each other and very engaging, or the opposite if I have a story, well, he proposed in a restaurant or at home or whatever. But I get them talking about themselves, which is the most important thing. I'll ask questions about the wedding and what other vendors they've planned. Sometimes I'll ask if they've seen other photographers just so I kind of have a gauge of that. I think if a client's coming to you, they already like your style. Generally, I think that's one of the criteria before even people make an appointment, especially in today's world. There's so many things and so many places on the internet where they can look visually at pictures that photographers have taken. And once they've made that selection, then they'll make an appointment to come see you. Budget usually comes into the conversation either at the end of the meeting, but I've also pre-qualified them before they come into the studio. I've given them an idea of where my fees start and the range of service that I give. If I'm out of their budget, I'm not wasting their time and they're not wasting mine. I've had meetings before where I've met with couples and realized in the middle of the meeting that they are not the right couple for me, and I think that's really important. Yes, there are times when, with photography, I think photographers understand cash flow and you really want that deposit. But ultimately, I think in the long run, if you shoot a wedding that you're not the right person for, it's going to cost you more money than help you at the time. So sometimes you just have to say no and walk away. People value photography less, I think, because everyone having a camera on their phone. Why should I pay this for photography? But when you're paying for a photographer, and especially a quality photographer, you're paying for an artist, you're paying for someone who has experience and expertise in their field, no different than hiring a contractor, a doctor, a lawyer. Especially with wedding photography, pictures, video are the most important things that you have left at the end of the day. Out of everything that you can spend money on the wedding day, wedding photography, in my opinion, should be your top priority because it's the only thing you have left. The flowers are gone, the food's gone, the music's over. Those are all memories, but what do you have to remember those? The photographs. So once my client has signed a contract, the first thing I want to do is the engagement shoot. I personally love the engagement shoot because I feel it's a really great way for me to get to know my client even more than that first meeting. I get to watch them interact together. I get to see them as a couple. I encourage my clients to do their engagement shoots at least 90 days prior to the wedding because I don't want it to be something that they feel like they have to do. I want it to be something that they want to do. I encourage my clients to take me to a location that's important to them. It could be a place they got engaged or a first date, a first kiss. It doesn't have to be, but I do that for a couple of reasons. I do that so that I'm not taking my clients to the same pretty park that I shoot at all the time. And the other thing that does is that it makes those engagement images more important to them than if I were just to take them to a park down the street, because we're doing them and we're involving them in something that's very significant to them in their life. Clothing for the engagement session is very important. First, I suggest that they do not dress out of character based on the location. Example, if we're going to the beach, I don't want them in a suit and a very formal dress. I usually encourage my clients to be themselves, be comfortable. Jeans is great, solid colors, long sleeve, long pants, nothing with logo. The importance of the clothing in an engagement shoot is because you want the eyes to go to the faces of your subjects and not subliminally get lost or caught up in patterns and logos and other things, bright colors. So they don't have to dress the same, but I usually suggest they complement each other, especially with most engagement shoots being outside. I suggest earth tones, your browns, your greens, your rusts, those type of thing. Blacks and whites are okay. I turn my engagement pictures usually within a week or two, and usually within a week. I think it's very important to get the images to the couples as fast as I can because they're excited about them. They want to show their family and friends. And sometimes I'll even pick 1 or 2 images from that session and send them a low-res file so that they can right away send something out on social media. There's a lot of things that people use the images for. Very popular now are save the date. They use them on their wedding websites and for social media, which is great for me as the photographer because now they'll start putting out their images and letting their friends and family see them. I also use the engagement shoot as a time to discuss more details about the wedding. We've spent an hour or so together. We've had a good time. Most people say, wow, that wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. On the flip side of that is they get to see how I'm going to be on the wedding day, and it makes them feel even more comfortable. And again, one of my goals with doing the engagement shoot is I want to walk in on the wedding day and have them go, hi, Robert, and give me a hug, as opposed to, do you remember me? You hired me a year ago. I'm your photographer. So when I'm doing an engagement shoot, the gear that I'm thinking about taking with me, first of all, is light. You know, I want to be able to carry some stuff, but I don't want it to be too heavy because sometimes we'll go on long walks, which is really why I love some of the Sony cameras because the E-mount bodies now are light. I would take an A7R II. I love the A7R II for many reasons. It's high ISO capabilities. The back illuminated sensor is beautiful. I really like to utilize the A7R II, especially in those times where I'm not capturing a lot of images, hundreds and hundreds of images, and I want the ability to have a high ISO. I'll do engagement shoots at night sometimes and just use ambient lights. The other camera that I would bring would be the 6300 because of the high frame rate in that camera. And the other camera that I would have with me that I always try to keep with me no matter where I go, no matter what I'm doing, is the RX100 IV. Because that camera, even though it's a very powerful little camera and takes amazing, beautiful images, looks like a point and shoot. If I go someplace where I know security is going to walk over to me the second they see my camera, I just use the RX100 IV and I take pictures of my couples that way, and they don't say anything because they think it's a point and shoot. The lenses that I would choose to take with me, probably 3. So definitely the G Master 85-1.4. A 70-200 is a really great lens for an engagement shoot because you have a lot of versatility. I'll take the new G Master 70-200 2.8, and then my 35mm 1.4 Zeiss. So some of the features that I'll use on a Sony camera during an engagement shoot, first is the articulating screen. So I really love the ability to place the camera on the ground, flip the screen up, look down into that screen, and then I focus and I shoot. Another great feature, the focus peaking. Focus peaking, for those of you who don't know what that is wherever you focus, the camera will highlight where the focus is, and you can choose the color that you want, whether it's white, yellow, or red. And the other thing that focus peaking allows me to do is actually look, once I have it focused, but like look at my subjects and engage with them and watch for the expression and then shoot when I want. The other feature that I really love about my Sony cameras that Sony does so well, and when I first started shooting them I was just amazed by, is the EVF, the electronic viewfinder. It's a little bit different looking through an EVF viewfinder than a typical camera in that you're looking at live view all the time. And the benefit of that is that, one, when I'm adjusting my exposures, I see it change right in the viewfinder, right in front of me, so I don't have to like take a picture, look down, adjust, take a picture, look down, adjust. I can do it in real time right in front of me. And I can take a picture of my couple, I can see how they look, and it pops up in my eye, and I can see the image that I just took without my client knowing. So it's a little more fluid in the photography, so I can be making adjustments and working and changing without them knowing it at all. Another great little bonus about the electronic viewfinder on the Sonys is the Sony allows you to set up different grid views. So the one that I choose is the rule of thirds because that's how I compose and use composition when I'm shooting. So it makes it that much easier to put things in thirds or center or however I choose to frame it. The other thing that I use almost all the time, no matter what I'm shooting, is the in-camera Wi-Fi. I can take an image off the card or off the camera, and via the Play Memories app, I Wi-Fi it right to my phone, and now I have it right there. I can send it out to social media. A lot of times during an engagement shoot, I'll just Wi-Fi an image to my phone, and then I show the couple. But I'll pick a choice image, maybe 2 at the end of the day, or maybe if it's really that great in the middle of it, send it to my camera and show it to them. And right away they're like, how did you do that? Photographing a wedding isn't like doing a shoot in the studio, when you realize, oh my gosh, I forgot my media cards, what are you gonna do? You know, you're gonna be starting to shoot within minutes. So it's very important to make yourself a checklist or a reminder list before you leave the house. Do I have all these things? Do I have my media cards? Do I have my batteries? Do I have my battery chargers? Do I have that tripod plate? I think it's very important to establish a routine so that every time you leave the house, you have a checklist of everything that you need. I was in Cancun recently. We were shooting the rehearsal dinner, which was on a boat. So when I travel, I bring a camera bag, I bring a computer bag. Well, my media cards were in my computer bag and not in my camera bag. So when I got on the boat, I did not have my card case with me. So one of the things that I changed as a result of that is I keep extra media cards in my car. I keep extra media cards unopened in my bag. So should I forget to grab my card case that has all my media cards in it, I'm covered. So some of the really important things to think about prior to photographing your wedding, especially when you're working with second shooters or even more, first and foremost is time syncing your cameras. You want to make sure that all your cameras are set up to the right date and the right time so that in post later it's easy to sync the images together and they all flow throughout the day and you can see exactly when they're happening. And I'm always traveling to different time zones, so it's very important to make sure that we are time synced. Just as importantly as your time sync, of course, is always check image quality, meaning are you shooting in RAW, RAW plus JPEG, JPEG, whatever your preference is. I always have to go through and do that because I'm not always shooting my cameras for weddings. One of the unique functions to Sony cameras is that you can set up your own copyright info. So you can go into the camera menu and you can put your name, copyright at Robert Evans, and that will show up on all the files no matter where it shows in the XF data. One of the features I like to use is continuous numbering. So it continues to number the files even as I change cards. So at the end of a wedding day, I don't want 4 sets of files if I use 4 cards with the same numbering. Another thing is you can custom set your file names. So I set my file numbers up so I know exactly which camera that is. So for instance, the first 3 letters I could have A7R. You know, you can't put the 2 in there, but I know which camera it is. A63, I know which camera it is. A7S, I know which camera it is. When I have the images in Lightroom, I can choose images from that particular camera. Another feature is folder by date. For example, I mentioned that I keep my RX104 with me in the car or in my pocket. I might shoot that camera for a week. So when I take out the card and I put it in the computer to download it, there'll be folders listed by the date that I took those images over that week. There's so many things that need to come together that day on the wedding and to end up with great images. So I've tried to think it through. I actually have a list of wedding day goals. These are goals that I've sort of set, put out there, whatever you want to call it, of how the wedding day is going to be a success. Because at the end of the day, all these things need to happen in order to have a good memory. For instance, the very first thing on my goal list is for all the guests and families to arrive to and from the wedding safely without incident, meaning no car accidents or anything like that. One of the goals I have is that I have eyes in the back of my head and that I'm in the right place at the right time to capture the most emotional images, that there is no equipment or card failure, and it goes on and on. I put those up that I look at, every day, especially prior to the wedding. I read them, I go over them in my head. You can, think about them, pray about them, dance around them. But I think it should be something that you do as a habit to, set yourself up for success. It's a mental preparation. So let's now break the wedding day down into times of day and sections of things that you will shoot on the wedding day. So the way I like to photograph the wedding is start about 4 hours ahead of time. So let's imagine that we have a 6 o'clock ceremony. I will start at 2 o'clock with getting ready. So from 2 to 3, I'm photographing the bride, her bridesmaids, getting ready. At 3 o'clock, then the two people that I want ready are just the bride and groom, and we'll find a private area and we'll do first look. And then I'll photograph them for an hour after that. At 4 o'clock, then I ask that the immediate family and the bridal party be ready. Moms and dads, brothers and sisters, bridesmaids and groomsmen. And then I photograph each of them with their sides of the family. And then at 5 o'clock, 1 hour prior to the ceremony, I ask that the extended family and special friends be ready. So aunts, uncles, cousins. Special friends would include maybe sorority sisters, godparents, people that may not be in the family, but that we want to make sure that we get special images of. I like to at least finish maybe 30 or so minutes prior to ceremony so that the bride and groom have time to go back and freshen up makeup, get a drink of water, relax a little bit. And then that's the time when I put myself with the bride as we lead up to the ceremony. The biggest purpose of getting the photographs done ahead of time is I tell them this. When you kiss and say I do and walk down the aisle, that's the point in the day when all the stress and the anxiety of planning your wedding for an entire year goes right out the window. And what are you going to want to do? And I sort of pause and look at them, and their answer is, well, go party and be with our friends. And I say, exactly. I want you to be able to kiss, walk down the aisle, and go be a part of your cocktail hour. You'll have an entire hour extra to spend with all those guests that have come from hundreds of miles away. So the first thing, of course, is getting ready. You show up in the morning, the bride and her bridesmaids are getting ready, there's hair and makeup people in the room. During shooting getting ready, I'm either shooting my 6300 or an A7S II. I have a 90mm macro 2.8 with me to shoot the ring shots. I have a 24 to 70 to shoot kind of just overall candids in the room. And occasionally I'll shoot with my 85 1.4, capturing images if I want to get in a little closer, but I don't want to be right on top of anybody. For me, this time is a very candid time. I try not to get in the way. I try to stay out of the way. I want to photograph the moments of her getting the makeup on, touched up, getting the veil on, those type of things. But almost more importantly are the moments that are happening in the room, her interacting with her girls, her mother, the laughter, the nerves. So those are the things I'm looking for. The other thing that I'm going to be shooting here are details. I'm going to be shooting the dress, the rings, any other jewelry, and her shoes that she'll be wearing that day. So I want to make sure that all those things are there and ready for me in the room when I show up. And I arrive to hair and makeup about an hour before first look, so I have plenty of time to sort of just play and spend time shooting the rings, grabbing candids in between, shooting the dress, the veil. So it makes it for a relaxing environment, not just for myself, but for the bride as well. So during getting ready, the features that I find myself using on my Sony cameras are, of course, always EVF, the electronic viewfinder. That is so helpful when I'm, adjusting lighting and exposure, articulating screen. Maybe I want to get creative. And again, I don't want to be that photographer that lays on the middle of the floor and a bunch of girls in a hotel room. So I'll use the articulating screen. I focus manually a lot, so focus peaking. Focus peaking is super helpful, especially when I'm shooting my rings with a 90mm macro. That focus is very critical, and so even without looking through the camera, I can see where the focus is on that diamond or those rings, which is very, very helpful. I've found over the years that hair and makeup tends to run late. So one of the things that I tell my brides is to lie to their hair and makeup people and tell them that they need to be ready 1 hour prior to the time that they actually do. So going back to our 6 o'clock hypothetical ceremony time, first look would be at 3. So I suggest to the bride that you tell hair and makeup 2. And I say, if she's done or if they're done with you at 2 o'clock, you and I both know what the real time is. So enjoy yourself, sit around with your girls, drink champagne, tell stories. There's no rule that says your wedding day has to be one stressful moment to the other. I do my best to set up the day and the photography timeline so that it's fun and relaxing for everyone, including myself. Another really important tip, learning the bridesmaids and the groomsmen's names while you're shooting getting ready. So this is how I'm in the room, I'm shooting the bridesmaids because I'm usually the one shooting the bride. I'm listening to their names. I've introduced myself to the girls. Hi, I'm Robert. Granted, if you have a wedding party of 15 girls, that's pretty hard to do, but it doesn't matter. Even if you say one or two of their names. So a lot of times as I'm doing the group shots, I'll say, hey, Lisa, could you scoot over a little bit? And you see them look at you. You see them go, wow, he knew my name. And that really adds a lot to your credibility and makes people like you. One of the things that I spend a lot of time doing is educating my couples on the wedding day. And a big topic usually always is first look and them seeing each other prior to the ceremony. First look, of course, is the first time the groom is going to see the bride in her dress on the wedding day. I get about 90% of my couples to see each other before. And of course, that goes along with what we've talked about on educating them on the wedding day and making them see why that's the better alternative. So in the scenario of first look, I'm usually always shooting with my 24 to 70. I do that because I want the flexibility of to be close when I want to be close and a little wider if I need to be wider when he first walks up. I want to be able to get in tight and shoot faces and emotion, but I don't want to be right on top of them. I want to give them as much privacy and as much intimacy as possible. I usually don't have a preconceived idea of where I'm going to do first look. Once I know the bride's pretty close to being done or she's dressed and ready, I'll then run out of the room and go out and scout a location for first look. Maybe I've noticed something on my way in, but here's the criteria that I use when I'm picking a first look location. First and foremost, I look for a location where they have complete privacy. Second, I'm looking for that location, like, is it pretty? Are there flowers? Open shade a lot of times if I'm outside, and then that of course leads into light. I also want there to be beautiful light. If all I can get is privacy, then I'm going to shoot first look a little tighter. I'm going to focus on my couple's faces when I don't necessarily have the best location or the best light. Once I've picked the location of where I'm going to do the couple's first look, I take the bride there first. I do this because I want her set and situated, fluff her dress, make her look pretty, and I tell her to stay put. I want him to walk to her. This way she's not dragging her dress across grass or concrete or wherever I choose to do first look. I talk to each couple, I talk to the bride and I talk to the groom, and I basically tell them the same thing. I say, this is your moment. I want you to say hello to each other, spend as much time as you want, and then once you're done saying hello, then we'll start your portrait session. So they've seen each other, they've said their hello, 5-10 minutes have gone by, they turn and look at me like, now what? One of the things that I do is called the parent portraits. I shoot full lengths, half shots of the bride and groom, very traditional photography, and I do this for the parents. So I have them put their arms around each other, heads together, give a little hug, half shot, full shot, turn, face each other, arms around each other, cheeks together, and I get the sort of traditional parent portraits done and out of the way so I can go on and be creative. I have now an entire hour to walk around with them around the location and take pictures. So during this session, I'm going to tend to use my favorite lenses. I still might have the 70-200 on. At some point, I'm going to switch to the 85 G Master 1.4 because it's one of my favorite lenses. But you never know. We're walking around and I see this incredible architecture and I need a wide lens, so I'm going to switch to a wide. I'm going to switch to my 35 1.4, or if I need even wider, I'm going to switch to my 16-35. The best part about this is they're excited to see each other, they're relaxed, the butterflies are sort of gone and the nerves from seeing each other for the first time, and we can sort of now walk around and just have fun. I've probably picked out places or locations that I want to use or think about shooting, and sometimes stuff just comes to me in the moment. The way I shoot my couples is very sort of loose and relaxed. I like to watch them. I like to watch how they're reacting with each other. I'll suggest things like go stand over there against that wall, and I'll sort of watch how they pose or how they come together. And then I may refine it a little bit so it's flattering, but a lot of times I let my couples sort of fall into poses or situations that's comfortable to them. They do it a lot better than I could tell them to do in most cases. Now it's 2 hours prior to the ceremony, and so now it's time to transition into immediate family and bridal party. I'm immediately going to switch lenses. Most likely I'm going to use my 24-70 2.8 G Master, my 85-1.4 G Master, and sometimes the 35-1.4 for larger group shots. I use the 85 for my smaller groups, meaning my bride with each of her bridesmaids or the groom with each of his groomsmen. Once I get to 2, 3, 4 people in a shot, I'm probably going to switch to the 24-70. And then anything larger than that, once I get like 10 or so more people, I'm going to switch to the 35. Another tip that I offer to my bride and grooms is lying to their families as well as lying to their hair and makeup about when they need to be ready. So I generally suggest to them about 30 minutes or so prior to the actual time that I want them there so that I can call them up. It can go very smooth and systematically. So I take the big group, I have her 2 or 3 brothers and sisters come out. I have the parents, so the bride with just her parents, mom and dad. I take that picture. Dad comes out, bride and mom. I put dad back in, bride and dad. Systematically, I'll go through them one at a time, and I try to keep it quick and I try to keep it fast. Put your arms around each other, give each other a little hug, smile, click, next. Now we're done with her immediate family. Here's another really great tip when you're doing family pictures to get them to smile naturally is to hug. They will naturally smile when they hug and you take the photo. If I have the bridesmaids and the groomsmen and the immediate families all together right there, I can get through this photo session in probably 15 minutes tops. Because I move quickly, I keep it fun, I'm interacting with them. So now we've gotten through the immediate family, the bridal party. I photographed each, the bride with her side, the groom with his side. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to photograph the extended family and the special friends. And again, what I mean by extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins, spouses of brothers and sisters, and their kids. Special friends might be sorority sisters, godparents, people that might not be in the family, but the bride and groom feel that it's important enough to get nice photos with them. I ask that those special friends be there an hour early because a lot of times these are the people that say, well, we'll get that at the reception. And what I'm trying to avoid is chasing the bride and groom and those people around at the reception saying, you know, you wanted that picture of your sorority sisters. And now that we've photographed all the family members, bridal party, special friends prior to the ceremony, when I see them again during cocktail hour or reception, I can concentrate on those people because I know those people are important to the bride and groom. Something that I like to do at my weddings is become the second shooter. So I have to have someone who I really trust to cover the main action while I go off and look for the intimate details. About 30 minutes before the ceremony is going to start, I put myself at the side of my bride and I just hang out with her, whether she's in the room with her girls, sitting with her father or her parents, and I basically just observe and watch, and I shoot those moments leading up to her walking down the aisle. And within that 30 minutes, and especially within the last 5-10 minutes before she walks down the aisle, there's some really great emotional moments. There's laughter, there's crying, you can actually visually see the butterflies on the face. Those are times where you're really going to catch real, true emotion at a wedding. A lot of times people are thinking about the main action, such as the bride walking down the aisle, but the real raw emotion, the true moments are happening a lot of times behind the scenes. So that's why I'm in the back of the aisle with the bride and her parents. And so I'm not the one that's in the front of the church shooting the bride coming down the aisle. I have to trust that to my second shooter. When I'm in the back of the church, generally my lens of choice would be the G Master 24-70. This lens gives me the most versatility. It's a 2.8 lens. I'm generally shooting probably on an ISO about 800 because a lot of times I have door light coming in because the doors to the outside of the church are open, or maybe the side doors are open so I have light streaming in from both sides. It's perfect for what I need at this point. So the ceremony's begun, everybody's walking down the aisle. The bride leaves and walks down the aisle. Because I'm behind her, I'm going to shoot that shot of her from behind. It's always an interesting shot, especially if there's a balcony. As soon as I get that last moment and she and her dad leave, I will literally bolt up a set of stairs and try to get up above her. This is the point where I'm going to shoot some wide overall shots of this ceremony. They're basically scene setters that I will use in an album so that I can have a nice 2-page spread, let's see, so you can see, here's the ceremony, this is where it took place, and now I'm going to move in and I'm going to focus in on a little bit closer. So I'll come downstairs, I'll switch to a 70 to 200, I'll walk up the aisle on either side, and my assistant's on one side and I'm on the other, and now we'll photograph expressions of the bride and groom. I shoot her, he shoots him. We'll also look at the guests and the people in the front rows, which generally are the parents, the grandparents, the kids, the bridal party, catching crying and laughing and those type of things. You know, the ceremony isn't just happening in front of you, it's happening all around you. And I think it's really important to capture guests' expressions as well as what's going on during the ceremony. One of the great features with Sony is the silent shutter. You can actually put the camera on silent, and when I say silent, you can't hear it. One of the first times I used it, I didn't even realize I was taking pictures. I was like, is it working? Because it's silent. You're pushing a button, you don't hear the click of the camera. So the awesome thing about this, especially during a ceremony, is maybe you can sneak into those places where you're not supposed to be. Sometimes I've wanted to shoot through a doorway that's sort of off to the side, and she's like, oh, well, you can't go back there because they don't want to hear the camera. So I'll actually show the church lady, like, listen, here's my shutter. I'll take a picture of her and I'll take it. She didn't hear it. And I say, can I go back there now? And she's like, well, yeah, if you're not making a sound. I'm also making sure that I cover all the important religious aspects of that wedding, whether it be the ring exchange, the vows. Depends on the type of religion that you're shooting. There's all sorts of traditions that it's super important to know what those are so that you actually capture those during the ceremony. But once all that is complete and the recessional and the kiss are starting to get close, I'll switch back to a 24 to 70 or maybe my 35. I'll put a flash on the camera, especially if I'm in a church. My second shooters usually come in the back. One of us still has a long lens and we can shoot the kiss and get it from that angle. So I'll usually walk up the aisle about halfway, kneel down so that I'm not in the way. They pop up, I catch a kiss shot, so one of us is shooting natural light, one of us is shooting flash, and the couple now starts to walk down the aisle. I'm backing up with them, taking photographs of their expressions, flash. I'm probably limited here with flash to 9 or 10 images because I can't shoot very fast because I have to let the flash recycle. If I'm outside, then this is a whole different scenario. If I'm outside and I have some pretty daylight for a ceremony, I'll put a 35 on the camera. I'll generally use my A6300. I'll put it on high frame rate. And I will walk down the aisle. I'll back up with my couple, and I'll just let that thing rip. I choose the 6300 to do this in an outdoor situation because of the high frame rate. And the autofocus system with contrast and phase detection, it doesn't miss a thing. It focuses. I don't have to worry about focus. I can just back up and shoot. And with a wide lens, not only am I catching the expression of the bride and groom, but I am catching the people watching all around me, and I want to include that in my shot. You're going to get so many more usable frames this way because I might shoot 30 to 40 images backing down the aisle. So when I go back and cull and look through my edit, I might have 10 or 15 images that are amazing as opposed to 4 or 5 backing down an aisle with flash. Another way I educate my clients, especially about the ceremony, is that everybody at a wedding today has a cell phone. I used to see just a bunch of smiles and elated and happy faces and expression, which really add to the overall impact of an image. But today, all I see is this. Now people have been putting signs out, having the priest make an announcement so that we don't have that and we go back to the way it was where I see smiling faces, not phones. The first images people see on social media are going to be the ones that they remember. So it should be the best images from the photographer that they've hired. So I work with my brides to make sure I pick 5, 10, 15 images and get those files to her right away so that she has something to put out on social media. And they'll ask their guests to not post images from the wedding before the bride does. Because honestly, once you've seen images from Lisa's wedding for 2 weeks, and then the photographer gives her the images 2, 3 weeks later, nobody cares anymore. So if we're outside at a barn or at a beach, or one of the things where the couple can literally kiss and say I do and keep walking down the aisle and keep going for a little walk, I will grab my camera and a 70-200 and I'll follow them from a distance. And I'll take images of just sort of that moment right after the ceremony, that they're excited, they're happy, it's over with. They're telling stories about the wedding. I see it all the time. And after 5-10 minutes or so, whenever they feel like they're done, and the lights changed at this point, I might have some beautiful backlight or a great sunset, I'll take 5 or 10 more minutes to do a few more portraits with them right after the ceremony. I don't want this process to take more than 10 or 15 minutes, because the idea of them seeing each other before is to go be with their guests. Getting the pictures done before and having the time during cocktail hour to shoot detail and decor is a huge benefit, because if not, usually you have about 1 or 2 minutes to try to get all the room shots and everything done. And as you know, room shots are important not only to the couple, but you can use them for marketing and getting them to the vendors to make them happy, so you can get referrals in the future. One of the things that I like to do during cocktail hour is I put the 70-200 back on my camera, and I walk around and I shoot candid headshots. So I basically single out individual people and I try to catch them smiling, laughing. They don't know that I'm taking pictures. And honestly, I've gotten some of the best feedback from couples about this. They're like, oh my gosh, you caught my aunt, she looks so great. You caught my friend, they look so natural. Because they are being natural, they don't know that I'm taking their photograph. And it's a great way to just walk around and catch a different type of cocktail images. I try to get about 15 or 20 really good ones. And really the secret to making this work is to keep moving, because sometimes you'll fixate on one person and you're trying to get them, but you're not going to get the shot. So just keep walking, keep moving, set a goal, shoot 10, 15, 20, and once you do, you're done. Moving on to the reception. All the guests have filed into the room and people are starting to sit and the band's playing. One of the first things that we're probably going to do is a grand entrance. The bride and groom are going to come in and do a first dance. There will be some toasts. Here are great opportunities to use other features in the camera. Again, silent shutter comes into play here. Many times during a toast, you don't want a loud, obnoxious camera going off, so silent shutter works really well here. We try to split it up, myself and my other photographer, and one of us shoots expression of the bride and groom, and one of us shoots the person talking. And basically, once you get a good picture, I just get off the dance floor so I'm not obtrusive. But I do something very interesting now, which I couldn't have done 5 years ago. Pretty much at all my receptions now, I shoot only available light. And it's because of cameras like the A7S II and the A7R II that allows me to do that. So I shoot available light, I use my fast lenses, I'll use my 85, I'll use my 70-200, my 24-70, and my second photographer will shoot flash. So I'm covering it both ways, but it gives the client a completely different look. And also by shooting in available light, which sometimes is lost in flash photography, is I'm really giving the feeling of what the room looks like with all the beautiful uplights and lighting on the centerpieces. So I'm capturing images as the eye sees it in the room. It's so amazing to me because a few years ago, I would have never believed that I could do this at a wedding, or cameras with these super sensitive high ISOs and great quality images would ever exist. Shooting a wedding, and especially a reception, with the ability to shoot it as I see it and high ISOs and fast lenses has really changed the way I photograph a reception. I'll give you a great example of how we do this. Let's say during cake cutting. A lot of times at the weddings I shoot, they have beautiful light, the cake's lit really well. So why not shoot it available light? I have plenty of light, so I will shoot it available light, and then I'll let my second photographer shoot it with flash. I generally, during cake cutting, don't control what happens. I give the bride and groom a few quick directions: put your arm around each other, hold the knife with your outside hands, and cut it, feed each other, and have a great time. I really trust my other photographers, and even during dancing or the things that go on, it really allows me to sort of push the envelope and think of different things that I can do to play, if you will. I really play photography at my weddings, and I try to find different ways. I'm thinking about building albums and shots going to that, so I might put the camera on the floor on a lit dance floor. I can go up high. I can shoot a wide overall shot of the room during a first dance, and my other photographer can be down there on the floor to get the close-up shots. But it gives me the ability to capture images that otherwise, if you're trying to be the main photographer, you're not going to get because you don't have the freedom to roam and to see those things. I feel it's really super important, especially new photographers, old photographers, however long you've been doing it, and especially at a reception, is as much as you can is to be everywhere, but to be nowhere. And what I mean by being nowhere is just being invisible to the client. You're there to capture what happens, but you don't want to be front and center. You don't want to be controlling everything. You don't want to be the director that they notice that you're directing. You just sort of want to be like a ninja and flowing in and out of a situation, capturing moments and moving on, but allowing people to have a good time and not stopping the flow of the party. I always feel as the photographer, it's my responsibility to make sure that I capture the toasts and the first dance and the father-daughter and all those things. So there is a point in the night where you're gonna wanna go eat and you leave the room. And generally, we always trade off. Leave one of your photographers in the room while the other one eats, because it's your responsibility to get those things. And I've heard stories before where the planner told me I could go eat, but then something happened because the band made an announcement. A good piece of advice is while one's eating, the other person stays in the room, and then you switch. That way you're for sure not to miss anything. Post-production and workflow is important. It's a big part of our job. We have to take our file security seriously. But at the same time, I try to keep my post-production very simple. I'll go home, I'll download my cards. Once that's done, I will back them up to another drive so that I have them in two places during the edit process. I go through, I cull my images, and I edit in as opposed to editing out, meaning that I choose the images that I like, not the images that I don't like. Once I have those 1,000 images, I import them into Lightroom. I go through and I tweak my images, and I really don't do a lot to my images. Generally, I'm warming up an image that might be a little too blue. I shot it in the shade. I want to add a little more warmth to it. I'm pulling out yellow. There's available light in the room. There's lamps on in the room, and a lot of time that's a very yellow light. But basically, those are the things that I'm doing with my images. Sometimes I'll add a little vignette to something. And of course, the images that I choose to make black and white, I make black and white in that process. Once I'm done editing the images, I take those raw files and those JPEGs and I put them on that second drive, and I only keep the best raw files and the best JPEGs on the second drive. I delete that first backup that I did. So now that I have them on an external drive, I have them on like a main server or my main drive, and then I take those JPEGs and I upload it to the cloud. I use snapshots. The clients can view the images online, they can view them on Apple TV, and the clients can order from them and pick their album images, and of course they're archived there. So now I have my files in 3 places. They're on my original drive, including the files that I didn't use. They're on a second drive, best JPEGs and best RAW files with numbering to match, and they're now in the cloud as well. The next step is a pre-design. I pre-design an album for my clients. Sometimes they choose the images. Sometimes I choose the images depending on what their needs are. I send them a design and we work together on any changes, and once they approve it, I send it off to my album company for printing and binding. I truly believe a wedding album is so important because it's the one tangible thing that you have left over from your wedding. It's like the one thing you can pick up, you can touch it, you can smell it, and it brings you back to that moment. And, I truly feel the wedding album is so valuable. In this video, you learned about how to get the shot you want, my favorite features of Sony cameras, how I educate my clients about the wedding day. You also learned about capturing great engagement shots, the camera settings I use, especially with multiple cameras, arranging the wedding day photography timeline, how I become the second shooter to capture truer emotional moments, using social media to maintain a competitive advantage, and finally, my post-production process. 27 years later, I'm still excited about shooting weddings. And especially since I started shooting Sony cameras, it's really reinvigorated my work, my photography. It makes my job even that much easier, and I'm capturing images that before weren't even possible. I hope that some of the tips I've given you really helps you with your wedding photography, and you come home from your weddings with some of the images that you want.